Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. I am Dr. Sadia Zafar and today I will continue the talk about the indirect values of biodiversity. In last lectures, some indirect values of biodiversity has been discussed, and now I will discuss about the remaining some indirect values of biodiversity. Indirect values, as discussed in last lecture, the values or the services that are provided by the biodiversity without any cost, means they don't have any market values. We are getting free of cost, and we know that we are getting many type of the foods directly from the biodiversity, from the plants, from animals or other organisms without investing money. So the value of biodiversity in food production: 1 billion people depend on forest products for their nutrition and for earning purpose. As we know that the people that are getting their food from the forest, they invest nothing, means they invest not money, and they can get benefit from these products. They use them as a food product, as well as they earn money from these products. So the biodiversity provides important safety net during time of food insecurity. We easily get the nutrition and food from biodiversity. Wild harvested meat provides 30 to 50% of protein intake for many rural communities. Means the 30 to 50% rural community are getting, or they depend on the wild biodiversity for protein nutrition, and about 75% of world's population depends on biodiversity for primary health care. Means 75% of world population depend on biodiversity for basic health care, and about 45% of global food production comes from various diverse smallholder systems and long traditions of managing the forest for food. In this way, we can get or fulfill our food requirement from wild plants or from the forest. There are some global trends in food production. As we know that agriculture begins around 12,000 years ago, and about 7,000 plant species and several thousand animal species are used for human nutrition and health purpose from very long time. Since 1900, global trend towards diet simplification, and today 12 plant crops and 14 animal species provide about 98% of world's food needs. Wheat, rice, and maize more than 50% of energy intake. Effect of diet simplification: more than 800 million people are undernourished, means they don't have proper nutrition, and 200 million children are underweight because they don't have enough food. And in 2009, more than 1 billion people were classified as hungry, the highest number in the history. Means that the 1 billion people that are classified as hungry, this is the highest number in the history. And other 1 billion people suffer from micronutrient deficiencies, including vitamin A, iron, and zinc. Greater incidence of type 2 diabetes among the urban dwellers. Different climates support different life forms. As we know that in different regions or different ecosystem, different type of the organisms they have. As this diagram is representing the overall biodiversity in the earth. There are some regions, their temperature and the biodiversity, that how or which type of the biodiversity is present in which region, and that region has different type of the temperature and climatic conditions. There is a positive link between the plant diversity and ecosystem stability that is visible across a global network of dryland ecosystems. The magnitude of this relationship is similar to that found between the stability and abiotic features like the climate and soil. However, the pathways behind the biodiversity and the stability relationship are dependent on the climate, since aridity modulates the stabilizing the role of plant diversity. As we know that the biodiversity is interdependent, means each group of the organisms depend on other organisms. As we know that there are some groups like producers, consumers and decomposers. Producers are organisms that create the food from inorganic matter. The best example of producers are plants, lichens and algae, which convert the water, sunlight and carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. Consumers are organisms that cannot create their food, means these are not the autotrophic organisms. Instead, they consume the food generated by producers or consume their organisms that have in turn consumed producers, means they consume the producers. Many insects and animals are consumers. And decomposers break down the dead, dying organic matters or decaying organic matters or the dead animals or organisms. And examples of decomposers are different type of the microorganisms and earthworms, sow bugs and some fungi and bacteria. And there are some sequencers that animals can also be thought of a decomposers, means they are similar to the decomposers. The producers are the foundation of any ecosystem. We know that the plants are very important because they are producers. They create the matter or biomass that sustain the rest of the ecosystem. Producers are the direct or indirect source of food for other living organisms. For example, the herbivores eat plants, carnivores eat herbivores, and microorganisms and fungi feed on dead animals and plants. as one organism feed on another, thus the energy moves through organism and ecosystem in the form of carbohydrates. Producers thus generate the energy and nutrients that sustain the ecosystem. The next level of organism that follows the producer is consumer. Consumer are the organisms that cannot prepare their own food and depend on plants and animal for feeding purpose. For example, in swamp habitat, a grasshopper eats swamp grasses that are producers, and grasshopper get eaten by frog. Then the frog is eaten by a snake, and the snake is eventually eaten by an eagle. In this food chain, the grasshopper is primary consumer, the frog is secondary consumer, snake is the tertiary consumer, and eagle is the quaternary consumer. In any food chain, apex predators such as eagle are the highest level consumer as they don't have a natural predators. Lion, eagles, shark and human beings are apex predators. Soil erosion. As we know that soil is very important in any ecosystem, and its degradation or its erosion, soil erosion, affect the biodiversity because the soil provides the shelter to many seeds and provides the plants with physical support, because the soil that give the support to the root system of the plants and act as a habitat for many microorganisms or other organisms, and retains and delivers the nutrients to the plants and play a central role in decomposition of organic matters. As we know that soil is also very important in the regulation of different nutrients in the recycling process that regulates the carbon, nitrogen, sulfur and many other elements and atoms and the nutrients. So soil holds the nutrient near the top that is easily available to the plant roots and take up the nutrients gradually. Soil also prevent the leaching and retains the fertilizers. It is also important in nitrogen fixation. It stores The soil erosion is basically caused by water that runs off the soil surface too quickly and carries away the soil from fields and other unprotected area like grazing lands. This is the one of the biggest dangers to agricultural production, because by soil erosion the soil fertility decreases and many important nutrients will also release from that area that is not suitable for crop production or plant production. The biggest layer of the soil for growing crop is the topmost layer, that is also known as the top soil. When water carries the soil of the field, especially when the top soil is lost, productivity goes down fastly. Reduction in the soil erosion. The roots of trees, grasses and other plants hold the soil in place on hillsides and sloping land. In other words, vegetation inhibits or hinders the soil erosion. In areas where the slopes are steep and the trees and grasses have been removed, means the area without vegetation, without plants, this protection does not exist, means we can't reduce the soil erosion in that area. If there is a period of heavy rains, the soil can fill up with water and slide down slope as mud. Unfortunately, when a large area of the land is affected, this movement turns into mudslide. Whole plots of the land and entire side of the hills can slide downhill, often strong, with large enough to destroy the houses and kill the people in its path. So we can say that the vegetation is most important way that can be used for reducing the soil erosion. In other words, biodiversity is useful for retention of the soil and inhibit the soil erosion. There are some references, and thanks very much for your attention.